Welcome to the deep dive. Wow, what a morning, huh? Sunday service at Agape Community Church.
Yeah, Pastor Florin really gave us a lot to think about with that Hebrews message. Part of the Authentic Community series, right?
Exactly. It was powerful. And honestly, it felt like the perfect jumping off point for what we wanted to chat about today.
For this deep dive.
Yeah, for this deep dive. We're calling it the Carpenter's Apprentice because it ties right into what Pastor Florin was saying about, what it actually means to follow Jesus, to apprentice under him.
Especially today.
Especially today, with all this stuff flying around, information, misinformation. It's hard to know what's real sometimes.
For sure. It's a huge challenge, particularly, I think, for, younger people trying to navigate everything online.
Totally. I mean, the sheer amount of information, just the volume and how fast it spreads, sometimes it feels impossible to sort out what you can actually trust. It's like a practical, everyday need, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
But, listening to the sermon, it struck me how Pastor Florin pointed out this isn't exactly a new problem. The tech is new, the speed is new, but the challenge,
Not so much.
not really. I
Yeah.
mean, even in Jesus' time, almost immediately, these let's call them counterclaims, started popping up about who he really was.
Oh, yeah, he mentioned a couple specifically. What were those again? The main sort of false ideas?
But one big one was that Jesus was just a human prophet, like a really special one, sure, maybe uniquely favored by God, did amazing things.
Miracles and stuff.
Right. But still, ultimately, just a man, a created being like the rest of us.
Okay. And the other one?
The other major idea floating around was that he was some kind of created spiritual being.
Yeah.
Higher than angels, maybe even the top angel, but still created.
So not human, but also not actually God himself. Something in between.
Exactly. Not God in the sense of being, eternal, uncreated.
Huh. It's kind of wild how those ancient ideas still echo today in some ways, maybe in more subtle forms. Okay, let's unpack this. How did the letter to the Hebrews try to, cut through that confusion? How did it aim to bring truth and authenticity to those early followers, to encourage them to keep trusting Jesus despite all that?
Right. Well, to really get Hebrews, you have to understand the world its first readers lived in. Their basic assumptions, rooted in the Hebrew Scriptures, what we call the Old Testament.
Okay, what were those?
Three big ones. First, God is eternal, always was, always will be, uncreated, outside of everything else.
Got it.
Second, God is the creator, Genesis 1, right? He made everything. And he doesn't just make it and leave, he sustains it, holds it all together.
Makes sense. Creator and sustainer.
And third, because of that, God alone is supposed to be worshipped. Remember Exodus. Worship no other God. That was fundamental. Worship belongs only to the uncreated creator.
Okay, so eternal God, creator, sustainer, the only one worthy of worship. That's the foundation. Here's where it gets really interesting. How does Hebrews chapter 1 build on that to talk about Jesus specifically? How does it address those counterclaims?
It's incredibly direct, almost like a point-by-point response. First, Hebrews 1:1-2 says God spoke through prophets in the past, but in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son.
His son, not just another prophet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is presented as the final, ultimate word. Jesus is the message. That immediately tackles the just a prophet idea.
Okay, what else?
Then, verse 2 also says that through the Son, God made the universe, and that the Son was appointed heir of all things.
Whoa, he made the universe.
Yeah, think about that. If he made the universe, he can't be part of the universe he created, right? He has to be outside it, before it.
Right. That knocks out the created being idea pretty hard, if he's the creator.
He can't be creation. And being the heir is like, imagine a king giving his son the entire kingdom, everything. It speaks of his ultimate authority and inheritance over all creation.
Okay, so final word, creator, heir. What's next? This is powerful stuff.
It really is. Then verse 3 hits us with maybe the deepest description. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being.
Radiance of God's glory. What does that actually mean, like a light bulb?
No, not quite like a light bulb God switches on. Think more like the sun and its light. You can't separate the sun from its brightness, can you? The light is part of what the sun is. It's inherent, eternal.
Okay, so Jesus isn't just reflecting God's glory. He is the eternal shining of God's glory.
Precisely. An exact representation of his being. That means he perfectly shows us what God's essential nature is like a perfect imprint. Not just similar, but the exact image.
So if God's glory and being are eternal, never had a beginning,
Then the Son, the radiance and representation, must also be eternal. He can't have been created. This provides that that perfect picture of God for us, for all creation.
That's huge. It just completely undermines those early counterclaims. He's not just like God. He is God in his essence.
Exactly. And verse 3 adds more. He's sustaining all things by his powerful word. He's actively holding the universe together right now.
Wow.
And crucially, after he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven.
Purification for sins. Pastor Florin mentioned that means making things right with God.
Yeah, basically cleansing the slate, removing the barrier that sin creates between us and God, a divine act, and then sitting at the right hand. That's the place of ultimate authority and honor.
Which leads right into the next point, doesn't it, about angels?
It does. Verse 4 says, he became as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is superior to theirs. And the key here, as the sermon emphasizes, that this isn't just about rank, it's about nature.
How so?
Jesus is God. Same essence as the Most High, angels. They're created beings. Powerful, yes, but finite, created. There's literally no comparison between the infinite creator and finite creation.
Even when he became human.
Right. The text implies his divine nature wasn't lost or lessened. He was still fully God.
And then there's the worship part. Hebrews 1.6, God tells the angels to worship Jesus.
Which is a massive statement. Because remember that foundational rule, worship God alone. You don't worship created beings. So if angels are commanded to worship Jesus,
he must be God. It's logical.
It's the clear implication. And the sermon also clarified that word firstborn here. In that context, it means inheritance, uniqueness, essence. Not literally being born first. God's firstborn is God. Eternal.
Okay. And the author uses Old Testament quotes to back this all up.
Yeah, pulls from Psalm 45, 102, 110, showing the scriptures themselves call the Son God, identify him as the eternal creator, and place him at God's right hand. It's a really tightly woven argument from their own sacred text.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot packed into just a few verses. So what does this all mean? How does understanding this Jesus, eternal creator, sustainer, worshiped by angels, help us today? Especially, like we said, young people trying to navigate this world. How does this tie into being a carpenter's apprentice?
Right, bringing it back to the practical. The sermon pointed to two key takeaways, two practices for apprenticeship, really. First, in a world full of false information, trust the text.
The whole text, right, not just picking bits and pieces.
Exactly, both New Testament and Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. Pastor Florin warned, pretty strongly actually, that if you pick and choose, you end up with half-truths.
And half-truths can be really dangerous, misleading.
Totally. So the apprenticeship practice here is active engagement. It's hands-on. You need to read the text, maybe use different translations to see nuances, then reflect on it, chew on it, let it challenge you, and crucially, process it with others. Talk about it, wrestle with it in community.
Like learning a craft from you practice, you discuss, you get feedback.
That's the idea. Reading, reflecting, processing together. That's how you learn to trust the text, the master's instructions.
Okay, trust the text. What's the second takeaway?
Second, in a world of intentional deception, trust the man. Trust Jesus himself.
Because the deception is real.
Oh, yeah. The sermon was clear. Spiritual deception is real. It's active. It affects you, your friends, the culture around you. But Jesus, the one Hebrews 1 describes, he's superior to all created beings, including any source of deception. And he provided purification for your sins. He dealt with the root problem. He fixed things between you and God.
So he's not just powerful. He's actively on our side. He's in your corner.
Completely.
Yeah.
Hebrews even says he instructed angels to assist and minister to those who follow him, those inheriting salvation. You've got divine backup.
Wow.
So the apprenticeship practice here is relational. It's about nurturing your connection with Jesus, actually talking to him, listening, spending time learning from him, and trusting him, even when things are confusing, when you don't get it.
Like an apprentice trusts the master craftsman, even when the process seems weird or difficult at first.
Exactly. Build that trust through relationship. Nurture it.
So it really does come full circle to navigating all that information and, well, deception out there. Knowing who Jesus truly is, this eternal, uncreated, universe-sustaining God who is also intimately involved. And in your corner, that's not just theology for a class.
No, not
It's like an anchor, a stable, trustworthy point of reference in a world that feels constantly shifting and, frankly, unreliable sometimes. If he is who Hebrews says he is, then you have a solid foundation.
a true north to navigate by. It cuts through the noise.
Yeah. Okay, so here's something for you, our listener, to maybe chew on this week. A thought for your own apprenticeship journey. If Jesus truly is the exact representation of God, the one holding everything together, and he's genuinely in your corner, What's one practical step, maybe even a small one, you could take this week to apprentice under him more deeply?
Could be anything, really.
Yeah, maybe it's spending 5 extra minutes reading a passage like Hebrews 1. Maybe it's intentionally pausing to reflect on his character during your day. Or maybe it's grabbing coffee with a friend to talk about this stuff. What's one thing you can do?
Good question to reflect on.
Definitely. Well, that's our deep dive for today. I hope this conversation was helpful. If it was, maybe share it with a friend who might find it useful too.
Yeah, pass along.
And hey, just a reminder, if you need prayer for anything, big or small, you can go to our church website, agapechurch.life, and submit a request online. We have a prayer team that would be honored to pray specifically for you.
They really do pray for every request.
They do. Also, feel free to check out the Agape Community Church YouTube channel. It's still a bit of a work in progress, we're learning, but we're putting stuff up there and getting better.
Get there.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep diving deep.